Namaskar. The portals of Rourkela Steel Television Centre have been serenading to many a brilliant and creative mind, but the genius we have with us today defies any label, any description. He is an essayist, novelist, poet, transcreator and an athlete. And in each of these facets of endeavour, he has achieved excellence. Yes, I am talking about Dr. CHANDRA SEKHAR RATH, who has honoured us with his presence in these portals today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, to begin at the very beginning, you had your higher education in Lucknow. Could you tell us something about those times when the newly independent country was breathing the fresh air of freedom?
I left for Lucknow in the year 1952. And those days we had very little choice. I graduated from Rourkela University and went to Lucknow because a friend of mine who had done his post-graduation from that university said, Lucknow is luck now. So your luck begins right now if you choose that place. I went there. This was first attraction. Second attraction was, there was N.K. Siddhant. He was the professor of English and he was a living legend those days. He did his PhD from Oxford and well, many things can be said about him. I don't get into details right now. And the third attraction was Acharya Narendra Dev. He was the Vice Chancellor. All these were attractions for me. I was a young man of those days. I was a young man of about 29 and 50, 21 years. 21 years of age, and I went there. Lucknow was a beautiful city. Today, I have been to Lucknow last year before last. Today it is not that beautiful.
It's very crowded.
Very crowded, like any other city in the country.
Any other city.
And you see, if cattle get together, they make the place dirty. But if human beings get together, they make it dirtier.
So true.
And there was a bridge connecting the city to the university. It was known as the Monkey Bridge.
Monkey Bridge, yeah.
Monkey Bridge was across River Gomti.
Yeah. This side of River Gomti, I don't think anything was there then.
Like university and something else. There was another girls' hostel and some other things. I never went that way because that was going west. So, in my recent visit, when they invited me to Lucknow, I was taken around the university and I was shocked to find that River Gomti was missing altogether. There are pools of water here and there, but the river flow was absent. And I wrote a poem there. It was published in their daily newspaper and it was widely discussed because there was a group of people who wanted to save Gomti from the land grabbers. And they made it their instrument. Then when I went to the university, I found it totally different from what I saw in 1950. I gave you a wrong date, I believe. I was there in Lucknow University from 1950 to 1952.
Yeah.
52 I completed my graduation.
Right.
So there I found that there were grill gates almost everywhere. The university resembled a prison. There was no free movement. There were gatekeepers. When I was asked to address the staff and students, I said, what has happened to your university? And more important, what has happened to you people? It was such a pleasure to move about in the campus, moving from department to department, moving from the lawn to the lecture hall. But this is a unbelievable for me. Why have you reduced it to a prison? Are you afraid of anything? Anybody? Or are you afraid of yourself? Why have you made it like this? I went to the department, the staff, the faculty welcomed me, and it was a very good meeting. I told them about my teachers, Professor Siddhant. He was, we called him Chaucer because he was very short in stature, plumpy, and he was walking very slow like a duck. And he had a full suit on every time because he was an Oxonian. And he always carried a book in his coat pocket. One day I went closer and wanted to see the title of the book. And I was amazed to find that it was a novel by Agatha Christie.
I don't think you would have expected that.
I was pleased and surprised both. And he was the walking encyclopedia. Whenever any teacher had any doubt about any subject, he just approached Professor Siddhant and asked him, and he gave him the direction that you can go to this part of the library, get this book, and the details are available. So there were other teachers also. Naresh Chandra was a professor of eminence, and he had the ability to send corrections to Oxford Dictionary from Lucknow University. Half a dozen corrections were incorporated by the authorities. Very learned people they were. And I spent my couple of years there.
In terms of the ambience during those days, a newly independent nation, what was special about Lucknow?
Lucknow in those days was a seat of Mughal culture. And people around, either Hindu or Muslims, spoke wonderful Urdu.
Yeah.
And I too picked up some Urdu there. And a friend of mine who came from down south always read it as Urdu. And I quarreled with him many times. I said, Urdu, what is Urdu? And Urdu is a language, is a camp language.
Camp, yeah.
And they wanted to sort of maneuver to get a system of communication with the natives. And in the process, Urdu was discovered. But later on, there are great men of genius who contributed to this literature and language. And it is one of the best literatures of the world today. So in those days, there was perfect understanding between the two communities. And Hazrat Ganj was the place where students of the university flocked in the evening.
Yeah, Ganjing was a term they used.
Ganjing was the term you have rightly heard, yes.
Yeah.
I went for Ganjing. And they many times invited me. And there were matinee shows. And we had one professor, just forgetting his name. He was a short man, hardly 50 kgs in weight. And he spent most of his time in Italy. He had come. And he was in the staff. He used to speak about 400 to 500 words during the entire period. But every word was well selected and irreplaceable. He too was there for the picture. And we pinched at each other and said, Professor has come. And the picture was Samson and Delilah. And so we returned. He probably left halfway. Next day, when we met, one of us had the courage to approach him and said, "How was the picture yesterday?" I looked at him, looked down, took a minute and said, "Horrible." You see, because he was a great lover of Milton, Samson Agonistus he had read, and through literature whatever he got was not found on the screen.
On the celluloid he missed that.
Nothing. So he didn't like it.
So you had the privilege of observing at very close quarters Pandit Nehru, Dr. Radhakrishnan, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma, Acharya Narendra Dev, Shri Govind Ballabh Pant. So what are your experiences?
One experience, let me narrate. It was early in the morning. It was probably this time around the year. And suddenly the news spread that Pandit Nehru had arrived. And my hostel, Hewitt Hostel, was closest to the university, main university building. And news went and we all came. There was a lawn. There were only two chairs, one for Acharya Narendra Dev, another for Jawaharlal Nehru. They were almost of the same height, same stature, maybe physically, maybe intellectually too. And they were friends. He was the Prime Minister then, but he never thought it necessary to send prior notice. As if he was visiting his own home.
That's very nice.
So he came there. And one of my friends from Hewitt Hostel came a little late. When he came and when he looked around and sat down, this entire process was being closely watched by Jawaharlal Nehru. And when the time came for him to stand up and say, he was furious. क्या समझ रखा है अपने को? अब संन्यास लेना है तो हिमालय चले जाइए. चले आ रहे हैं, मुंह धोया हुआ नहीं, disheveled hair, because he straight got up from the bed and that was his difficulty, poor fellow. So he got all the banging. Then suddenly he changed the topic. As I'll tell you about a Chinese farmer. He had some 7 sons and all of them are brilliant. He made one of them a professor, another a doctor, like this. All professions were exhausted. The last was just good for nothing. But he grew up. Then the farmer, Chinese farmer, wise as he was, scratched the back of his head and said, he is good for nothing, I will make him a minister.
That must have got a terrific response.
That was Jawaharlal Nehru speaking on ministers, he being the Prime Minister of the country, that was what he said. That rich sense of humor, having a joke at his own expense.
Yeah.
You see, this is a sign of great men.
True.
So that was Jawaharlal Nehru. Shankar Dayal Sharma was taking my class on law. I attended his classes. And I belonged to the backbenchers. And there was a drawl in his voice and we slept. And that was Shankar Dayal Sharma. Professor Radhakrishnan. I didn't meet him in Lucknow University, but I met some of my friends who were students of Banaras University, where he was the Vice Chancellor. And he used to take one Sunday class. That was on Bhagavad Gita and Indian culture. And it had a specific time, 9:30 in the morning. And people arrived there around 8:30. They didn't mind waiting for Radhakrishnan for an hour. All of them stood up to receive him, and his car came, and his personality, that dhoti and tall cloak and the turban and all that dignity in his face.
Immaculate.
And he used to move step by step, measured steps. And when he came to the stage and stood before the mic, it was 9:30.
Wonderful.
9:30. So impressive. And I saw him at Brahmpur when I was in Kalikot College. He came there for a function and he addressed us. Dr. Radhakrishnan's address for about 25 minutes was an experience never to be forgotten in life. From the quadrangle, the national flag was visible over the small building, one-storied building. I looked at the flag, national flag, and spoke. The significance of the national flag, the colors of the national flag and all that, and a few more things in his own immaculate way. Then something happened, to tell you which I have given you this introduction. There was one missionary school there, Quid the Missions School. And there was a Spaniard, the principal. He was very friendly with us. We were young lecturers then. He was very friendly. He had come to attend the meeting. And he got the time when he was being conducted to the hall for a civic reception. He came and touched his feet. Radhakrishnan in his dignified way looked at him like this. Oh, Williams? Then we came to know that he was a student in Oxford 25 years ago.
Wow.
This was the type of teacher Radhakrishnan was. Very inspiring instance. I can't forget it. That was Professor Radhakrishnan. So many things have happened in life. Okay.
These great people, you have seen them at close quarters in that era, that time. Now if you compare the transition, the kind of people, the kind of leaders we have.
Well. Better not to compare.
I think you've said it all. I think you've said it all.
Better not to compare, because there is only a contrast to be seen.
I know.
In fact, in one of the meetings, I was asked by a teacher. He stood up from the audience and said, "Sir, whatever you said was so very meaningful, and we are grateful to you for those words. But I'll ask you a very simple question. In your days, they showed you the photograph of Mahatma Gandhi, Gopabandhu Das and others, and straightway asked you to be like them. You chose. You had a model before you. Kindly tell me the names of those, the photographs of whom I can show to my students these days."
Wow, fantastic question.
I was stunned. I remained quiet for a minute. I said, "I wish I had the answer." No. So that is the difficulty now.
You're right, sir.
So
Absolutely.
there is a downward gradient is downward.
Yeah, completely downward. So you were a bodybuilder and an athlete with, I think, several records. Now, do you think physical strength or the well-being, how important is it for a creative mind? You know, is there a kind of a synergy?
In fact, it is, the entire thing is based on a misinformation, which I have been trying to correct every time they ask me questions about this. I was not a bodybuilder, never did I intend to be a bodybuilder. I was a sportsman, all right. I was my college champion. I was a sprinter, believe it or not, a sprinter. And I took the Champions Cup in my undergraduate days. Later on in Lucknow University also, I represented in discus throw and other things. I had went to Bangalore for inter-university. So this is the story. And how this identity stuck to me, I'll just explain to you.
Please.
There was one Dada, he was a Bengali gentleman, and he was grooming the students of university for this title, Mr. Lucknow University. There was a hitch in his club, and his name was Chandidas. And the person whom he had chosen fell out with him, and he couldn't produce him on the stage on the day. He had somehow seen me, located me, rushed to the hostel, asked me to take out my clothes. Only one chaddi was there, and he put a lot of glycerin on my body. and dragged me to the gymnasium which was close by and told me, you need not worry at all. There will be one fellow standing at the end of the gallery. You look at him and do as he does.
Whatever pose he strikes, you follow.
Yeah. And he was with a pointer in his hand explaining, this is bicep, this is tricep, this is deltoid. And explained to me. And there are photographers and floodlights and all that. And there was a loud applause at the end. And the chief guest stood up and said, Chandra Sekhar Rath is Mr. Lucknow University this year.
Wow, fantastic.
See, this is the story, the long and short of it. And from that day on, I am not able to wash it out. I don't want it. I don't like it either. But it is there.
So it was all serendipity, not design.
Not design at all. So I was a sportsman. To be a sportsman definitely helps the openness of your mind, because you take victory and failure with equanimity.
Right. That's so very important.
Yes. So I have been a sportsman, and a sportsman can be in spirit, if not in action. I'm now old, but I still am a sportsman. I can take either a success or a failure in my stride without any difficulty. And creativity is a subject to be separately dealt with, not clubbed with this.
Correct. So could you tell us something about your tryst with poetry?
Well, in records, I started writing poetry at the end of my literary career. By now, 3 collections have been published. Tuma Pai Pakhi Gano, Agoku Banasto, Moghoro Bahutu Duro. And they have been liked by senior poets, writers, and friends around. I have faced interviews where questions have been asked as to why I chose to write poetry at the end. And according to them, normally a writer begins with prose and ends up with poetry. I told them 2 things. Number 1, in fact, every writer begins with poetry, though he doesn't publish it. Youth and poetry go together.
Absolutely.
So as an adolescent, one feels like writing a poem, not an essay. It is there, but later on, he chooses to write prose with mature mind. That's number 1 reason, that it was there with me also. Number 2, I all along wrote poetry, though the expression was different. Very sensitive readers have said, not once but many times, that my prose is poetic prose. I think it is relevant to tell you about Paramananda Acharya, another great man from Mayurbhanj. He was an archaeologist, and it was a raining afternoon, it was heavily raining. There was a chill in the air, and I was sitting in my drawing room. It was a small 4-room house I had taken on rent. I heard the footsteps of somebody approaching, and there was a bang on the door. It was really a very cruel weather for anybody to come out. Suddenly I opened the door and found no less a person than Paramananda Acharya, who was then in his late 70s, standing there. And immediately he started, Chandra Sekhar, tame jo prose lekho cho seta poetic prose.
Wow.
One Chandrasekhar Basu was writing in Bengali 58 years ago. I was stunned. I welcomed him to the drawing room, gave him a towel to wipe up his body, and then he told me many things about Bengali literature, prose, poetry, and so he was such a learned man.
Right.
I can never forget that incident in my life. He said that despite the warning of the doctors, he was not supposed to move out
And
he was
that
under
too
medical care, yeah.
And that too, that kind of a
That,
cruel
that
weather.
kind of weather.
True.
And he came all the way walking, maybe about a kilometer, just to tell me that my prose is poetic prose.
Amazing. Really
So
amazing.
let anybody say anything about my prose, but I still consider Paramananda Acharya to be the best critic and the most learned critic that I've ever met.
True, sir.
So I was writing poetry all along. It was there as an undercurrent. Now it has come out in its own shape. That is the only difference. Otherwise, well, you could certainly call me a poet right from the beginning.
Absolutely. You've got such a beautiful way of expressing that I mean, it's pretty obvious that you've been a poet right from the beginning. And the definitions, I mean, you are beyond definitions, like I said in my introduction. So your 3 novels form a trilogy, the third one being Navajatak. It has been compared to the prophet of Khalil Gibran. What would your opinion or view be?
The question should be aimed at the person who compared. You see, I never thought of Khalil Gibran while writing Navajatak.
Yeah, but now if people say that it reminds them of Khalil Gibran.
Well, I will take time to compare, read them both again and compare. Yeah. Often I just can't.
So, but what is so special about this book?
Khalil Gibran is such a great writer, and I am one of the admirers of Khalil Gibran. And much before he got his Nobel Prize, I had the prophecy. I said, here is a man who deserves it richly. And Khalil Gibran writes poetry in prose.
But then again, the comparison is, I think...
No, writes philosophy in poetry.
Yeah.
He writes spiritual realization in poetry. Khalil Gibran is a man of very deep realization.
But so are you? That's what critics say, that your prose is philosophy, your prose is spirituality, your prose is mysticism.
And well, come out with an essay comparing Khalil Gibran and Chandra Sekhar. I'll give you a reply.
You're perfect in the art of repartee also. So you're well versed in literature, science, philosophy, metaphysics and mysticism, and are also extremely capable of explaining complex tenets or credos to your audience in a very lucid, clear manner, as we have seen during this conversation. This truly is a rare endowment, and it has been accepted across. Now, this kind of erudition, this kind of genius is getting very rare. So, what would you say? I mean, why is it that we are not able to think in these holistic, we are more niche driven, trapped in our own small little, what should I say, complex webs of thought?
This seems to be a comment rather than a question. Point is, unless you are clear in your thought, you can never be clear in your expressions. If you are clear in thinking, then expressions also will be equally clear. But for that, you need a very natural and full command over the language which you speak. Otherwise, the language will not obey the direction. You can't express what you want to express through that language. Obviously, language is just one of the mediums to express your thoughts, feelings, ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And language is not adequate always. Because it is not adequate, people take to physical gestures and facial gestures and all these to supplement. And at a particular point of time, if the thought to be expressed goes deeper and deeper, the medium of expression admits defeat, total defeat.
True.
It is, I can give you one instance. You take a lump of clay. It is very obedient to your command. You can give it a shape. You are trying to make an image of an angel. Okay. Up to a certain extent, it cooperates with you. Then you give the command, look, I want the color of champak blossom on the skin of that angel. And I want this kind of lustre in the eyes. The medium, namely the clay, comes down on its knees and says, "Oh Creator, I have already crossed my limit. Beyond this I can't go and cooperate with you. You can't express what you want to express through me. It's a limited medium with a limited capacity. Therefore, for subtler thoughts, you need much better mediums. What you choose is up to you." That is why at times, when I could not say, I took up the brush and painted. And while painting, when I could not go any further, then I took up the pen and started writing. So I changed from one medium to another out of a kind of helplessness, that this medium is not enough for what I want to say. Therefore, I need another medium. Whatever I have said in words cannot be expressed in colors, and whatever I have painted in colors cannot be expressed in words.
But so on the way of or route to transcending these mediums, you have achieved perfection in the other medium also. Now that is truly remarkable. So the helplessness from helplessness also, if you produce genius, then what else can we say?
Well, I don't claim all that, what you say, but you see, it all depends upon your sincerity. Very sincerely, I have tried to express myself, to reach out to the reader or to the viewer. As far as possible, I have approached him. Point is, perfection is ever approachable, but never accessible.
Absolutely. That's a
you keep on approaching it perpetually, but you can never reach it. So in expression also, perfection is never reached. There is always a possibility of improvement.
True.
You can still improve upon it. Otherwise, you know, great writers would not have left things half said, waiting for somebody else to come and complete
that. Absolutely.
You see, and all said and discussed about literature, I feel that for entire mankind, there is only one literature. Language is a matter of smaller detail. Whatever was there in Tolstoy as a writer, the feeling, his reaction to men, his reaction to the human society,
problems,
everything, is identical with a writer like you here in Rourkela. There is no difference substantially. Intrinsically, there is no difference. Language is only a matter of detail. He was born in Russia. You are born here in Odisha. Therefore, you have chosen your language. He has chosen his.
Correct.
And the language to be used for creation is always the mother tongue. Because it's not enough that you learn the language. It is necessary that you must live the language. Unless you live it, you won't know it. As it is rightly said, when you hear, you doubt. When you see, you believe. And when you live, you know.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
I hear about Rourkela, I just suspect. Possibly it is true, possibly it is not. I see Rourkela, I believe it. But to know Rourkela, I must live.
You have to live.
Not live in it. Live Rourkela.
Live Rourkela, yeah. The sensibilities, the ethos,
Yes,
the everything of
you
Rourkela.
must live Rourkela.
Yeah.
Then only you know what it is.
True.
So a language, you are born into the frame of a language, born into the frame of a culture, born into a time and space, born into a parentage. These are known as the facticities of life. You can never change your parentage. You can never change the time and place chosen for your birth.
Absolutely.
You can never change the language into which you are born.
Correct.
All these are facticities. And unless you have such a language as a parental property given to you, you can't treat it as such as your own with freedom. And if there is no freedom, there is no literature.
Truly well said, sir. Absolutely. So you've straddled so many fields of creativity. How would you like to be remembered? Can I be impertinent enough to ask this question? Is there a chosen field of yours?
Yes. Every individual has umpteen number of facets to him. You can never be complete in your knowledge about another. That is why it is said that a man is inscrutable. I see your form, I know your name, I notice your complexion, I am told about your profession.
Yeah.
All these are information about you. But to know you, I have no ability. Why? Because every moment of your life, the last 30, 40 years or whatever, something has happened, something or the other has happened. And that something is a part of your total life. If I am not acquainted with the total detail, right from the moment of your birth till date, I can't claim to know you. Knowing the other is entering into the other, living the other, which is not possible.
True, sir.
Therefore, to know me, to like me, you have to become me.
Yeah.
If possible, try it out.
Yeah. True, sir. So now moving slightly from the theme we are discussing, you have been to Rourkela on and off. And we Rourkelites are very proud of our steel city. So what has been your impression of Rourkela?
My first impression is that you have wonderful roads and wide, clear, clean roads, and city is very well planned, and every sector has its own marketplace. So while planning for the city of Rourkela, those people who did it had everything in their minds. In fact, I have written a story. Say that story is Shunya Thikona, which narrates the experience of an old man who has lost his way in the evening back home. He was living in that city for the last 35 years or more. His son was born. After his retirement, the house has been allotted to his son. All this has happened. But this old man is not able to get his way back home. He is noticed by another young man and he wanted to help him. And throughout night they tried. It was a moonlit night. And the old man said that we planned this city according to the letters of the English alphabet. 5 streets, 5 across, 25. Last was the 26th Jed. That was the common cremation ground. We planned it, but things have changed in the meanwhile. Many things have changed. I am not able to get back to my son's place. Now, what is the number of the house? I can take you there. Now, that is my difficulty. I've forgotten the number. At the end of it, the young man said, okay, I'll come back in a minute. And he went home for a change. It was small hour of the night already. When he came, he did not find the old man anywhere. He went this way and that way, no trace of him. Ultimately, he found a small packet on the window space. There was a chocolate for his son, and there was a note scribbled that you are my son, your son is my grandson. I need not search for the so-called my house anymore.
Wow.
Adieu. So, point is this, I was telling about the planners. They have planned Rourkela wonderfully well. I'm in love with this city because of its neatness, the silence prevailing.
A lot of greenery. We are making efforts to green this place in a big way.
Greenery, yes. Rourkela is a wonderful place.
So our employees are known for their commitment and zeal. They are very, very hardworking, and they have a tough life because of the conditions in the steel plant. And they are karmyogis, like you are the best example, I think. So what would be your message to the employees of Rourkela Steel Plant?
You know, time is passing. Things are changing. Values are changing. Well, there was a time when they said the larger the better. Now they say the smaller the better.
Small is beautiful.
Small is beautiful. So there was a time when large number of employees had to come and attend at a particular time. The number was so large that the last one to enter was 2 hours late. So ultimately they thought it over and said, well, this is not correct. Let us invent something which will suit us. They said, instead of time, call it flex time. You attend to your child's education, take him to the school and all that, you do everything. You come at your convenience, jot down that time that you have come at 10:15. Work for 8 hours.
Yeah. From then on. And then,
Yes, yes. Flex time. So this is the most modern concept. I have seen the flow of vehicles on the road at the time of going to the office, going to the plant and coming out of the plant. And I'm told that your plant now has around 16,000 employees.
Around, yeah, slightly more than that, yeah.
20,000 employees. It's a very large number. Very large number, and to manage such an army of workers is really a challenging job. But if you can manage and if you can utilize their services properly, they can do wonders. And sky is the limit. You can do anything with such an army of sincere workers. If they are devoted to their job, you must have the plan to utilize it. Because a person, like a factory or an organization, is as large as its dreams.
Absolutely.
You are as large as your dream. If you do not have a dream, then you have a very stunted growth.
True. We are limited by our dreams. And
Yes.
we are as large as our dreams.
If you have a large dream in life to pursue, your life becomes broader, higher. You grow taller in your own estimation and the estimation of others.
Others, true.
That's how it happens.
So your words of advice, or should I say the message, to the
message?
generation next, to the young generation, to the youth of today.
We have a line of blessing in Sanskrit. I say, when a young boy comes and touches my feet, I say, Ayushman Bhava Soumya Prachina Yogyo Bhava. Live long, live a prosperous, successful life, but be worthy of your ancestors.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Great.
That is my message.
Thank you, sir. So, viewers, I'm sure you must have enjoyed this very erudite discussion, conversation with the modern day Leonardo da Vinci. He was talking about perfection, that it is approachable but not reachable. That's one takeaway I'm going to take home. The second, his blessing to all of us, his words of advice to all of us, that we should be worthy of our ancestors. I can't sum up better than that. Thank you. Namaskar.